For all things football,
wow, you will not see a better goal.
BBC Sounds has got you covered.
These fans have gone absolutely wild.
More live Premier League football than anywhere else on 5 Live.
And there is the whistle, and a brand new season begins.
And the Football Daily podcast.
Everything football, every day.
For all the Premier League action and reaction, listen on BBC Sounds. BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. I'm Liam McLeod, and after the disappointment of Euro 2024 and a breathless start to the domestic campaign, it's time to turn our attention back to the national team as Steve Clarke's squad prepare to kick off their Nations League A campaign against Poland. We'll have the latest from inside the camp.
We felt the love in the summer, and of course we were all disappointed by the end, but it's up to us to try and feel the love again. But for us to do that, we know we need to perform.
With a number of new call-ups, which of the debutants could make an impact?
Armstrong onto Ryan Gold, who could finish. He has. Kifty, it's a great pass into Ryan Gold, and it's an even better finish.
And what sort of opposition will the Poles be at Hampden?
All of the strikers are playing, scoring goals for their teams. Piontek in Turkey doing well, and obviously Lewandowski's great.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Thank you very much for listening, for streaming, for downloading, and hopefully for subscribing as well. It's good to have you with us for this edition of the Scottish Football Podcast as we preview Scotland against Poland in the opening match in the 4th edition of the Nations League for Scotland. Of course, it's been a tournament that's been pretty kind to the country in the past. Let's hope so that it repeats itself in this edition. I'm joined by the former Scotland winger Pat Nevin, 28 caps, 5 goals for his country, and Tom English, BBC Scotland's chief sports writer. Guys, good to have you with me for this one. The Euros in many ways feels like yesterday, but in others it feels like years ago. Pat, have you just about got over it?
For Scotland's position, it's one thing. Is for the rest of the Euros, which I stayed on for quite a lot longer, they were really enjoyable. Going back to, for the last time possibly, the Scotland fans were amazing. The Scotland team less so. And I think that's what we all felt about it. But yeah, it was, the idea is, and historically before Stevie Clarke came around, it's getting there. Can we possibly get there? Okay, so we're now beginning to get there quite frequently. Problem is, when we get there, we weren't really that competitive, or as competitive as we thought or indeed hoped we would be. And that's the kind of overarching thought that we had at the end of it, I think.
Yeah, I think, Tom, actually, when you look at it, I mean, I was very much of the opinion going out there that, you know, this is the win for Scotland. It's making these tournaments after years and years of not getting to them. But actually, I think the Scotland supporters were so optimistic going into it that it's almost like it was a double blow going out of the tournament, but also going out of the tournament having expected to do pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, getting there is great, but then you reset your targets once you get there. I mean, no one's going there and saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. Of course it matters. It matters a huge amount that they're competitive. And you look at it, you know, just as time goes by, I look, okay, the 5-1 against Germany, it was a nightmare, but park that. The second 2 games, it wasn't defensive failings per se that were the problem. They conceded 2 goals in 2 games. One was a wonder strike against Switzerland.
That's a slack ball from Ralston. He's given it to Shaqiri. What a goal! And Anthony Ralston has sold the jerseys, and Shaqiri has made him pay by finding the top corner.
The other one was a breakaway goal in the last seconds against Hungary.
Now it's Solai, poor first touch, but still he's into the penalty area. Looks up, can he pick out a teammate? He can. It's Soba scored. Hungary have won it. Hungary have broken Scottish hearts.
So that wasn't a disaster. It was the paucity of their attacking game, their lack of creativity, their inability to fire a shot. That was the problem. That was where the huge disappointment lay. If Scotland went out against Hungary and they lost 4-3 and exited the tournament, I think a lot of people would say, well, do you know what? They gave it a right good rattle. It's this feeling that they just they just didn't turn up as an attacking force. But that was a continuation of what they were delivering pre-Germany, wasn't it? I mean, the rot didn't set in when they got to Germany. It existed just almost immediately after they qualified.
Yeah, it was a real anticlimax, that Hungary game in particular. Look, we've got so much to discuss with Pat and Tom, and we don't have too much time to do it. So we're going to get right into it in a moment. We're going to also get the lowdown on the opposition. Polish football expert Christopher Lash will be joining us, but we are going to focus on Scotland just now. I've been trying to get my head around this game, the Nations League in general. We'll maybe touch on it a little bit later. It has got so complicated. The process for qualifying for the next World Cup it's mind-boggling. The UEFA have basically introduced a new round in the Nations League, so there's now going to be quarter-finals for those who finish in the top two of Nations League A. You're also going to get playoff games. So if Scotland finish third in this section, you've got a playoff game against a runner-up from League B to determine whether you're relegated, or in Scotland's case, you stay in that position. And the World Cup qualifiers kick off at the same time. So they're going to be running the European qualifiers for the World Cup and the latter stages of the Nations League at the same time. It is going to be an absolute car crash from what I've been looking at today. But let's just focus on this match just now and not look too much further than Thursday. How big a game is this, Pat, for not just the team and getting off to a good start in a tournament, but how big a game is this for Stevie Clarke, given he and John Carver don't seem to have seen much of it, but there has been criticism with the nature of the exit from Germany, hasn't there?
There has been, and I think when you start looking at the statistics in the recent games, it's not great. John Carver, I heard mention the fact correctly that some of the games before that had been against some of the biggest nations that there is. Add on top of that, we've managed somehow to get ourselves into the A-League now. So we'll now get Portugal and Croatia and Poland to a decent team as well. So, success brings good things, but also brings problems as well. There's not that many minnows games or kind of average games. Scotland are having to try and punch above their weight at this point in time. And when they're trying to do that, you want to be at your very best. You want everybody available. That's not the case, is it, just now? I don't think anyone would argue it is. We've got so many important players either missing or going away. Obviously, McGregor's a big one. Hickey's been out for a long time. Tierney unavailable, huge one. Obviously, you add Adams to that. It's, and Tom, correctly, I think we agreed with this. We chatted about this when we were over there in Germany. This lack of creativity is an endemic problem for Scottish players at that level. Our creation was mostly the left-hand side when you had Tierney and when you had Robertson hammering up there and delivering from there. Tierney out, and then Robertson getting, being limited by, people knowing that's where Scotland's strengths are, or him not being able to get out the back anyway because we're under pressure. So that was a massive part of our creativity gone there and then. The other creativity is people like, to some degree, McGinn and Christie, but they're not classic number 10s that are getting the head up and controlling things, which most of the other teams seem to have just now. We haven't got a player, hence Ryan Gauld being brought into the team. But whether he's good enough at this level to be the creative force there is another thing. So, and also add on top of that, John McGinn looked absolutely wrecked during that tournament. It wasn't the John McGinn that we know and Aston Villa fans knew and had fans knew before that. So no lack of problems to look forward to. And looking at the squad that we've got just now, I'm sure we'll have a tighter look in a wee minute. Where is that strength again now? Well, are we going to get that much power down the left-hand side? We brought Doig in. Would that make a difference? Could he fill in for Tierney and allow Robertson to go? And it's kind of a big ask, but maybe that's something that Stevie Clarke's asking for. Still, Johnson comes in on the right-hand side, maybe, but is he better than Hickey? Well, I doubt it, but we shall see that. And then, of course, you've got that gigantic big Galway hole in the middle of the midfield where McGregor's not going to be there. And of course Gilmore sits in there. That's classic. But who beside him? What a huge question that is.
There's many questions, Tom. I just wonder how much of the credit, and he built up a lot of it, that Steve Clarke's lost on the back of not just Germany, but this run of 1 win in 12, and that solitary victory came in a laboured victory it was too against Gibraltar and Faro.
Yeah, it's one, as you say, 1 win in 12. A lot of credit has gone out of the bank. And this run of games, 6 games, Poland, Portugal, Croatia, Scotland won't be favourites to win any of these games. So that's the reality, right? These teams are better than Scotland, especially a diminished Scotland, as we're going to see with players missing. It's not inconceivable this can go to 1 win in 18. I don't want to be like fatalistic about this, but this is a possibility.
Well, the odds are that it will be.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would say the bookmakers would say that's the most likely scenario, right? That Scotland are going to lose all these games.
But at least not win them, yeah.
Yeah, or not win them, yeah. So Steve Clarke is going to have to do something different. He wasn't giving away in his press conference last week. He wasn't giving away anything about what lessons has he learned from Germany. Is he going to change the shape of the team? What is he thinking in terms of bringing in a more creativity? He was playing cards close to his chest, typical Steve Clarke. That's fine. What we'll find out against Poland, he cannot go back in with a traditional Steve Clarke team. 3 at the back was purely a design to get Tierney and Robertson in the team. Surely he can't have 3 at the back. He's got to go with a 4.
Well, he did it against Hungary, didn't he? He used Scott McKenna in his Tierney place, but obviously he's not got the same ability.
Yeah, he's got to have a nod to something different, trying something different. If that's Gauld, I think Gauld has to start this game. Lyndon Dykes has been a great servant and Steve Clarke loves him, but he's got limited minutes this season. I think it's 48 he's played. Does Tommy Conway come in there? I think Clarke has to show that in his team lineup and his formation, look, we're trying here. We're trying to get more creative players into this team, trying to create more problems at the other end of the park. But if he just goes with a traditional Steve Clarke team, I think he's going to lose even more fans. And they lose. He's going to lose even more of the Tartan Army than he lost in Germany.
Do you think he'll mix things up? You know him really well, Pat.
Yeah, very quickly. Try and get inside his thought processes just now. Right, you're playing against the Poles. They're going to play 2 up front. Are we brave enough to get 2 centre-halves against 2 strikers when they've been Robert Lewandowski? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that. The other downside of going for a back 4, which gives us more of a chance to control games with more midfielders, you end up having Robertson at left back. We don't want him there. We want him further up. Because if he's a wing back and he gets there and he creates stuff from that left area, but if we create him as one of the back 4, yes, you can overlap now and again, but you're not a wing back, so you're not going to get that much. So he's going to have to, every solvable problem's got another problem on top of it. So I get where you're coming from, Tom. I'd be delighted if we might as well have a go. These 6 games you talk about, this is the most winnable one. This is it. so what you want to do is, if you're going to take a chance, this is the time to take a chance. So I would be very tempted to go with a back 4, but I would understand why he wouldn't do that. The big question is other people, like, if you bring Doak in or Gauld in, they're limited in that time they've had at international football. You're asking them to go and walk in and be the control and influence in a top international match against a very good international team. Big call. Massive call.
But you're not asking him to be controlling influence. Doak, I don't think, is a runner, because I don't think he's played since last December.
Yeah, he can
so
run.
I don't think you can put a kid. You can't put a kid in there. Maybe if things are going well, or maybe give him some minutes at the end. But I don't think he's an option. Gauld would be surrounded by experienced players, McTominay and Gilmore and Christie, McGinn. So you're not saying to Gauld, right, Gauld, this is it, just light it up. I think he has to change something, Pat. He cannot go with a traditional Steve Clarke lineup again.
I just would be very, very intrigued. We won't get much of his thinking beforehand. We might get a little bit of it afterwards. But you're right, those core players that you mentioned, they've all got to start, right? So you put them in the positions immediately, and then you see if there's a space. And also if you've got Gauld, for what we've seen of him, and of course he's been away a lot and he's moved a lot and he's had time in first teams and out of first teams. He's playing a different standard now, which is a much lower standard now. But, is he playing as a classic 10? Because that's what we need. We need somebody in a classic 10 who can, get the ball and get the head up and play passes to, the players that run in front of him, be it Christie, be it McGinn, be it whoever's centre forward, Shankland, whatever. And it's a big call, because every team that has that creative 10, the plague is through them. So I'm not saying I did say control, but I don't mean control, but you're core. You're absolutely core to the team. I have to almost put myself in that position because I know what it felt like. Because, you described me at the start as a winger. I hated playing the wing. I'd only ever started playing the wing when I started playing professionally down south. But I felt myself as a 10. But see, when you get a chance, even if you've not had that many chances at international, boy, what a lift it gets you. So maybe moving towards your thinking, Tom. Yeah, maybe worth a go.
Gould's interesting actually because he's been playing several different positions. He's been playing as a centre forward. He's been playing on the right wing. He's been playing as what they call the secondary striker. He's been playing the number 10. So he is capable of playing in any of those positions in the team. And, I know there have been plenty of people calling for his inclusion for a while now, but if he can catch fire in a Scotland shirt, as we know he potentially can, then he could be a right good option.
Yeah, and the thing about you playing against the Poles are absolutely set. That back line of theirs doesn't budge. It's pretty good.
Well, since you've mentioned the Poles, let's find out a little bit more about them. I've been speaking to Christopher Lash, who is a Polish football expert based in Warsaw. Christopher, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast for this one, looking ahead to what is actually a big competitive international football match. It's difficult to kind of get your head around the fact the European Championship is gone. I suppose for Poland, qualifying for major tournaments has been kind of second nature over the course of what I would describe as the Lewandowski era. How important are Poland viewing this Nations League campaign?
The big issue is the sort of transition between a generation which did pretty well at 2016, for example, the Euros, they got to the quarters. So we're in a bit of a transition period at the moment. So I think that every game, not the friendlies, obviously, this is sort of in between a friendly, right? Between a friendly and a really competitive game. But I think it's important to bring in the new players. And, there's a lot of chop and change in international football because, players sometimes don't play for their domestic teams, injuries. So it's not easy. But I think the Nation League is quite a good way of, which is something that is competitive, but it isn't, life or death like, the qualifiers or a major tournament.
Yeah, I mean, the Nations League's been brilliant for Scotland. When it comes to the Nations League World Cup cycle, though, it is more difficult to achieve a playoff place guaranteed before you go into the actual qualifiers. I think for this one, you've got to actually win your section, which is clearly for Scotland, and I suppose for Poland as well, given Portugal and Croatia are also in this section, that it's going to be quite difficult to do that. Similar to the Scots, Poland are looking to bounce back from what I suppose ultimately was a disappointing European Championship, albeit and it was an exceptionally difficult group with Austria, France and the Netherlands in there as well. Was it viewed nationally as a bitterly disappointing experience like it has been here?
Not really, actually. Mainly because no one had any expectations at all. And I know that normally when Polish national team is at the Euros or the World Cup, there's a huge amount of expectation, and there wasn't hardly anything. I mean, basically because they just scraped through the qualifiers, beat Estonia, and the second game was a very, very forgettable game. It was Wales, I think. Yeah, it was really not a very good game. So no one expected anything. Really difficult group, obviously. People just wanted to, play some young players, do their best, and it wasn't all that bad. Of course, only 1 point, but no one expected to go through. Anyway, I think people were a little bit disappointed only in the Austria game because people thought that was a chance after playing quite well against the Dutch. But against France, I mean, it was just a free hit, really. And the whole tournament in general was a free hit. So in general, the coach, Probiej, didn't come out of the tournament too badly. Normally, a coach that would do that would be massively attacked, especially over the last 8 to 10 years where Poland's been qualifying for everything. But this time it was, people, I wouldn't say happy, but it wasn't a bad atmosphere, really.
Yeah, Poland have been to the last 2 World Cups and I think the last 5 European Championships. They are used to qualifying for things. And in fairness, the Dutch game, I remember watching that. We'd actually just arrived in Cologne, having made our way up there from Munich. And I remember catching the end of it. And it was that late Wout Weghorst goal that did for them that day. What can Scotland expect from the Poles then in this match? Because it has been a kind of transitional time for them. You've got the kind of the mainstays there. I mentioned Lewandowski earlier on. If you think that Robert Lewandowski's going off the boil or he's heading towards retirement quietly, it's 4 goals in 4 games for Barcelona already this season. But they've got many other players in there who are looking to make an impression. Piatek, for example, I would have thought would be somebody who is going to be very important to them going forward. Zielinski's a little bit older now as well, but just moved to Inter from Napoli, where he had a really good time if it helped them win their first Scudetto for a long time. There's still plenty in there for Scotland to worry about, isn't there?
Definitely in terms of the strikers. All of the strikers are playing, scoring goals for their teams, either in the US or in Denmark. Those are sort of the 2 sort of minor strikers. But then Piontek in Turkey doing well. And obviously Lewandowski's great. Zielinski is a great player. It's a bit weird that he's 30 now, but I think that happens, just time just sort of creeps up on everyone. But the main problem currently is the fact that a lot of the key players are not playing in the club. So Zielinski, Moder is not playing at Brighton. They're talking about him maybe leaving. Kivior at Arsenal, who had a really good season last year, now because of new signings and because players coming back, has also not been playing. So that's been the real big problem. That's the big problem in terms of putting the squad together, is that there's quite a lot of players who are key, who will probably play, but who are not playing for their clubs. And I'm sure in the next month or so, these players will start playing. Maybe not Kivior, but Moder, Zielinski, this guy, young kid, 19-year-old Urbanski at Bologna is just coming back from an injury. So these are players who are going to be playing. It's just that right now they're not. And so that's left a lot of kind of sort of question marks. Obviously, very difficult to pronounce, but I can do it. Szczęsny, the goalkeeper's just retired. And, 34 is not very old for a keeper. He could have gone for 3 or 4 more years. So there's a lot of kind of question marks really over the squad. But I think the talent's there. Whether, they turn up against Scotland is another question.
Yeah, I mean, you're right to highlight the goalkeeping situation there, because he's obviously had the gloves for such a long time. Is it just a case of Łukasz Skorupski coming into the team now to replace Szczęsny, or does Dragowski get a look in? What does he do here?
I think it's almost certainly Skorupski. It's like everyone's saying, Skorupski always like a sort of junior goalkeeper. He's 1 year younger than Szczęsny. He's just not played that much because there was also Fabianski, who was a great goalkeeper, still playing obviously, but not for the national team. Łukasz Fabianski at West Ham. And these are players who, those 2 goalkeepers were basically sharing it for a long, long time. But I think it will be Skorupski. There's a keeper who's just signed for Wolfsburg. He was playing in Denmark, Grabara, who a lot of people were saying should have been called up. He's got a huge ego, but didn't get called up. I think it'll be Skorupski. He's a pretty stable goalkeeper. He plays regularly, obviously, in Serie A. So, Dragowski's in Greece now. And Bulka is playing in France for Nice, but I think it should be Skorupski, just because he's a stable goalkeeper. He's playing in top level football. Makes sense, really.
And did well with Bologna last season, of course, getting them into the Champions League, and he'll be looking forward to performing on that stage this season as well. Scotland have lost a few more players to injury, so there's clearly weaknesses in the Scotland side just now. No Hickey, no Tierney again. Are there weaknesses in the Polish team that the Scotland players who are in the squad and could potentially play can target?
Definitely. I think the keeper's fine. I think the strikers, again, Lewandowski's is still world class. He's not fallen off like Ronaldo, who I can't believe is still not retired for Portugal. But anyway, that's another...
Well, I think in Scotland we were all hoping that Lewandowski, Modric and Ronaldo would all have chucked it by this point, but they all seem to be up for more.
I mean, Lewandowski's 36 compared to 39, so he's still, and also his game wasn't based as much on pace like Ronaldo's was, right? So, but anyway, that's another issue. I think that the strikers are fine. I think the midfield, again, the problem is players not playing, but I think they're talented. The weakness is the defence, clearly. You've got Bednarek, who will probably play, but just because we don't really have anyone else, who's at Southampton. He's not bad, but he's, positional play has not got really better over 6 or 7 years in England, which people thought he might improve. Probably Kivior will be playing. He's a good player. I actually like him a lot, Kivior, but he's not playing for Arsenal. And just in general, I mean, the defence is not that great. So I think that, clearly Scotland, they're at home, so they're going to be attacking, hopefully, for you guys more, So I think that if they can pressurise, especially the central defenders, that, some joy can be had, set pieces, that kind of stuff. But, if Poland get the chance to play, which obviously I think Scotland probably trying to play hard against them and stop them giving them that chance, then I think that, Poland are pretty good going forward.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Polish football expert Christopher Lash there. They are in a period, Tom, the Poles, in transition right now. Lewandowski's been the constant throughout this entire kind of decade or more. Zielinski's a fabulous player, won the Scudetto with Napoli, as I mentioned there. They've got a few young guys who are trying to break through. Defence looks like the way to target them. That's their major weakness. Regardless, this is a nation, Tom, that while Scotland were failing to qualify for things, Poland were qualifying for things. 4 World Cups, I think, out of the last 6. They've been to the last 5 Euros. This is a team that knows how to get these jobs done.
Yeah, it is. They are, as Pat says, they're very, very well set. They'll be very well drilled. And Robert Lewandowski doesn't show any sign of letting up. I mean, he's 36 years of age, but he's got 4 and 4 for Barcelona this season. Yeah. The guy is one of the greatest goal scorers of the modern age. Well,
Gerd Muller's the only man to score more Bundesliga goals than Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah, and his appetite is Ronaldo-esque, He's got an insatiable hunger for goals, and his ability to get them just seems to be undimmed, So obviously, there's a big, massive red flag around Lewandowski. The rest of the Polish team, I think they'll be very efficient. I think they'll be strong physically. Obviously, this is the kind of the traits that they have. They have a couple of young players, as you say, flitting around the scene. Whether they're tried or not in this game, we'll wait and see. But this is, as Pat said earlier, this is Scotland's best chance of a victory. If it goes to 1 win in 13, see, this is the pressure's already on Steve Clarke. It's a home game. If they deliver a big performance and they win, the pressure eases, right? So they've brought an end to this horrible run. If they don't win or they don't have a very credible, encouraging draw, then there's problems. Because that's your most winnable game in inverted commas out of the way, and you haven't won it.
And then you go to the most difficult one on paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that could be a sobering experience in Portugal. So, it's a huge game. It's the first game of the campaign, but it's a massive game in the context of it. The failing in Germany, the run of 1 win in 12. A stellar players missing from this Scotland squad. It's an enormous challenge for Steve Clarke.
Pat, you mentioned Callum McGregor earlier on. I mean, I've been watching quite a lot of him this season with Celtic, and he is very much at his best.
Back it goes to McGregor. Punches a shot and goal! Callum McGregor! 2.5 minutes in, he's found his shooting boots this season as the Celtic skipper rifles it into the bottom corner.
So clearly he's going to be a massive miss in the side. There's been a few call-offs as well on top of the injuries. What's your take on that?
I think what people in the bigger picture look at now is we all know it's going to be 6 hard games. We all know the likelihood we won't be in the top 2 here. It will not be as good as that. And you have to figure out something in that period of time. And the big thing you need to figure out is this the start of a transition? Or is this group, you just try and wring everything out of it you possibly can until the next World Cup qualification is decided. And if that means a run of 1 win in 18 games, so be it. Because there is only one ending that matters now. Getting into the World Cup. That's it, full stop. So you need to kind of step back a wee bit. And I suppose that's what the SFA decision they'll have to make. I don't think it'll be Clarke's decision. I think he seems like a guy who wants to stick on with it. And we may actually have to be brave and just put up with it, realising that how many of these players, you mentioned the fact that we're kind of losing McGregor, but how many more of them after the next 2 years are going to be still there, are at their peak? They're a lot of our biggest players. This is, I thought it during the Euros there, but I thought we'd maybe have another campaign, and I think they've got just about another campaign in them as a core group. do you know what? I wouldn't want to be the manager after that because that's definite rebuild. So I think there have to be a strategic thought of, right, this is going to be tough. Try and get some players in if you possibly can. Keep that spirit up, which is going to be hard, which of course is the real strength Stevie Clarke had at his best with that group. And what that will mean is try and get everybody turning up when you can. But it's actually going to be hard for Clarke to do that.
Let's hear from the camp then. Steve Clarke, he's been speaking to the media. He was addressing them on Wednesday afternoon, the day before the match.
We've touched on the summer, it was disappointing. We have to move on. So this is our first game. For the players that have been playing at the start of the season, they go to their club, they have a little freshness about them. For me, it's been a long summer and I look forward to the game and see what we get from the players. I'm sure a big reaction. Looking for the fact that you qualify, you have to keep looking to get there. And you have to target the glass ceiling and say no Scottish team's ever done it. Probably a little bit more quality when we get to that level, when you're playing against opponents of the level that we played against in the summer. When we play against the opponents of the level that we're going to play against now in the Nations League. So it's slowly trying to find a formula that will break the glass ceiling. Evolution, not revolution. Obviously this time we have a significant number of injuries that has probably impacted my squad selection a little bit, which means that I've had to dip down into Scott's under-21 squad probably too many times, if we're being honest, because the under-21s also have a couple of very important fixtures coming up. But that brings its own freshness. It's important, and I've mentioned it before, is that we respect the core group that have managed to qualify for back-to-back European tournaments. But then within that core group, you have to try and add a little bit more, and hopefully we can add something that makes us better. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen across the two games that we're going to play now. But I'm looking at this campaign in the Nations League and thinking this is the chance to try and evolve the group so that when we do get to the World Cup qualifiers, we're in a better shape, ready to go again, and ready to qualify for our third tournament out of 4.
Steve Clarke there. Also speaking to the media was the captain, Andy Robertson.
We've all had disappointment in the past, whether that's getting beaten cup finals, whether it's relegation, whether it's missing out on league titles, whatever it is. We've all had disappointment, and I think that's part and parcel of being a footballer. We have highs, but we also have lows, and I think the summer was a low for all of us, and of course it was, but we have to then move on from it. We have to now be... If we weren't positive, then it's pointless us being here. We have to believe, and okay, we might have some doubters again within our country. We felt our country right behind us in the summer, and we get that they're disappointed, and now it's up to us to try and drag them along with us again. It's up to us to try and show on the pitch that we're willing to fight, we're willing to win games, we're willing to put in the hard yards, and if we do that, then we know our fans will come with us as well, because we know they love supporting Scotland. We've seen that in the summer. We've seen so many great moments of them supporting us. I think the German people absolutely loved them, and we want that again. We felt the love in the summer, and of course we were all disappointed by the end, but it's up to us to try and feel the love again. But for us to do that, we know we need to perform. We know there's now pressure on us to perform, and it's up to us to go out and do it, and that starts on Thursday. We know we've worked so hard to get in Group A in the Nations League. It's not been easy. We've played games against Albania at Hampden in front of 15,000 people, and now we're in Group A with 3 really good nations. So we've came a long way, but it's up to us to now stay there, and it's up to us to compete at that level, and that's what we need to show now.
Tom, this Nations League campaign is huge. People, I think, realise the importance of the Nations League. This time around, though, it's against big beasts of European football. The draw actually could have been worse for Scotland. But there are reports emerging that when it comes to the World Cup qualifiers next year, the top 8 ranked sides in the Nations League will go into Pot 1 or Pot A for the World Cup qualifiers. Pot 1 will be made up thereafter by the 4 sides next in the FIFA World Rankings, and the rest of the qualifiers will be determined, or the seeds will be determined by the rankings as well, the world rankings. Scotland are plummeting. As it stands right now, I think they'd be pot 3 for the World Cup qualifiers next year, unless they can finish in the top 2 of their Nations League group, which Pat has already said is going to be exceptionally difficult. It's like, that just shows you how important it is that Scotland start winning games soon, because this slide could go further.
Yeah, the walls kind of have been closing in ever since actually they qualified. You know, those final games in the qualifying campaign. There were 2 draws. Was a 3-3 and a 2-2 when they were qualified at that point. From that was the kind of kick-started the decline.
It's kind of almost when Scott McTominay's goal in Seville was ruled out by VAR. Things seem to just start dropping from that point.
Yeah, but as I've said this before, there was a freakish element. Scotland deserved to qualify. There's no question of that. But there was a freakish element in the way they did it, in the shape of Scott McTominay scoring with seven of his 8 shots on target in the qualifications.
Tierney plays it across. It's half away. McTominay! The stuff of dreams for Scotland!
Which is a statistic which I think if we scoured the record books in the history of the game, you wouldn't find a strike rate like that from anybody. So you couldn't repeat that. The goals dried up, and Steve Clarke now has to find a new way, because you're right, it's getting harder and harder and harder. The more games they lose, the harder it is to win the next one, and this is even more challenging this time, because even his go-to players don't have a lot of minutes. There's a bit of turbulence in their careers. Gilmour and McTominay moving clubs, very few minutes between the pair of them. Is Anthony Ralston going to fit? He's missing his 2 first-choice right backs or right wing backs. Is Anthony Ralston going to stay in situ there? Ralston has played, I think, 50 or 51 minutes for Celtic this season. Dykes is his first-choice centre-forward now that Adams is out. Shankland is not himself at all. If it's Dykes, he's moved club as well. He's played less than 50 minutes this season.
Yeah, and he's dropped down to the 3rd tier in England.
And he's dropped down to the 3rd tier. It's challenges everywhere he looks, and it's a really good team coming to Glasgow. I wouldn't want to be Steve Clarke, because and McGregor's retired as well. So, wow, the scale of the challenge and the height of the stakes is amazing.
I could sit here, guys, and talk to you all day and all night about this. Got so much to get off my chest. I know you two do. Just finally, though, Pat, it's incredible. Tom's talking there, and it sounds like we're negative Normans, I think, is what your pal described people like Tom as before the European Championship. It is incredible, isn't it? Because this time last year, I think I was in Cyprus watching Scotland effectively rubber stamp their place in Germany.
A pass, McTominay into the box, rolls it to the edge of the area. McGinn takes a touch and shoots and scores! It's so easy here in Larnaca. John McGinn.
Last time they kept a clean sheet, incidentally. 3-0 victory against the Cypriots, apart from the Gibraltar game, of course, certainly competitively. It's amazing, isn't it? Because we were on such a high last year to this now 12 months later. Give us some hope and optimism, Pat.
Right, so first of all, as Tom mentioned earlier on, forget the Germany game because that was the home nation. The other 2 games in the competition, without being brilliant, we weren't absolutely and utterly battered. So, we're not miles and miles and miles away from that. We certainly lost it in a lot of the friendlies because we have to be at 100%. We're never at 100% in friendlies, and that style that Stevie Clarke needs doesn't work. So there's a number of reasons why it went the way it did for that long period of time. I still think that there's a number of very good players, and if you get the best out of them again, McTominay, Gilmour, it's a real core there. Some of the centre backs are okay as well. So the core of the team is okay, although we need a goal scorer and a bit more creativity. But I think we need to stand above it sometimes and think we were having conversations not that long ago that was generations since Scotland had qualified for anything. We've qualified for 2 out of 3 now, right? So we need to keep that in our heads. I can't stop being slightly negative Norman again, though. Remember, and I don't know if you're old enough, Liam, to remember.
I probably am nowadays, to be honest.
Scotland's basically falling off the edge of a cliff came against, and it was a game we played against Belgium. Craig Brown was the manager, his last game in control.
Well, firstly, Pat, I'm very pleased that you're sceptical as to whether I'm old enough to remember that one. That's made me feel personally a lot better.
Excellent, God. You must have been watching football when you were 4. Yes. But we were... it was a real shame because it was a late goal and it was a 2-2 draw, I think. And we fell down the pots. And after falling down the pots, we never get out because we were 3rd and 4th pot. That's where the real danger is. We've talked about it already. And it's hard to see a way where we don't start falling down the pots. And when you fall down the pots, it's so much harder to qualify for anything. So that's my concern at the end of it.
You were doing so well, but you're right to highlight that.
What happened to Positive Pat? Positive Pat has left the building.
Realistic. Negative Norman Nevin.
Yes. Listen, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Let's hope it's a positive start to the Nations League campaign. My thanks to Pat and to Tom, and for you for listening. Remember, you can hear full live commentary of Scotland against Poland on Sports Sound and BBC Radio Scotland. We're on air from 6. Kick-off 7:45, with extensive coverage as well and live updates at the BBC Sports Scotland website and the mobile app too. And the Scottish Football Podcast will be here with reaction and analysis after the game. So if you haven't done so already, just follow and subscribe wherever you listen. Bye for now.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me? This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.